So welcome to Inflammation Revelation, episode number 3, where we're going to talk about histamine. Now, when people hear histamine, they often think of allergy reactions, and it is histamine that's used in that term. But what I think we don't recognize is how histamine works leading up to and before you ever get to the level of allergic reaction, because it is one of the greatest causes of inflammation in our body. Now, many foods have actually recently been determined to have a level of histamine in them, meaning that depending on the different food, there exists in it a level of histamine that may react differently in my body versus yours, but there still is a component of it that actually comes in the food. It's just not simply the reaction in my body or yours. So we can look to some of the foods that are high histamine and guess that maybe they're causing inflammation in our body. But we also have to consider what's called the histamine bucket theory. And that is assuming you're dealing with a large bucket and you put this one food in that has a low histamine and this other food in that maybe has a medium level of histamine. And then you put in high histamine foods. Really, you may be able to tolerate all of those until you get to the top of the bucket. And it's when you overflow that bucket, meaning your body isn't able to deal with the histamine and process it and not cause a full-blown reaction in our body until we fill the bucket, until we hit our body's capacity. And when we hit overflow, that can be where you see allergic reactions or, huge inflammation or sinus congestion, swelling from the typical type of allergic reactions. But what we don't recognize is as we're filling that bucket, there could be a low level of inflammation that's happening. And then when we overflow the bucket, even if we don't have a full-blown allergic reaction, we could have huge inflammation that's happening there. So we have to consider this when we look at all food, because it doesn't mean the second you eat one food, if you don't have a reaction, that nothing's happening in your body. Now, to start with, you can look to some of the higher histamine foods, and it's a very complicated scale to figure out what foods are on what, but I would look initially to the high allergy type foods. So a lot of different types of grains, or like wheat, obviously wheat flour, corn, soy, those kinds of somewhat because of their processing, maybe because of the chemicals. There's a million reasons you could say, but also just naturally holding a high level of histamine can cause for some of this inflammation, which means you could have where once or twice a week if you eat it, you're okay, but if you ate it every day, then you have this chronic swelling that you don't even realize comes from it because you don't have a reaction right when you eat it. So some of the other common allergens, people sometimes have issues with dairy. Same thing. Maybe you can have a little bit. Maybe you can have cheese, but not tons of milk. There's different ways. So you can look to the subtle issues you have after it, but then look to, oh, was this a bad week? Did I eat a lot of milk? Am I kind of feeling bloated or swollen? And this was a big craving I had all week. So you're not trying to eliminate it. You're trying to decrease it, so that you can see if you kind of have a more balanced reaction or sense of your body and inflammation throughout the week. People can have high levels of histamine reaction to some citrus. And so it really is, if you look to some of the common typical food allergies that you think that you can eat somewhat okay, they may be okay for you, just not at a consistent every day, every week sort of level. So check some of those out, see if there's ways to decrease them, see if you go a few days without one of them, how you feel, and that can give you some hints to what might help decrease the inflammation in your body. Good luck.